are listening to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast, a place to empower women of color in the music business.
Welcome to season 3 of Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. This is your host, Janisha Jones, back with a very special VIP guest. On this podcast, we talk a lot about mentorship and the importance of having leaders that look like you in the boardroom. I've had the honor and privilege of working with the incomparable Tina Davis, OG music executive and artist manager, helming from the Bay Area. There's nothing more to say but that she is a trailblazer whom I've had the utmost respect for in opening the door for women of color like myself to have a seat at the table and to absolutely own it. So without further ado, welcome Tina to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. How you feeling today?
And I feel good. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. This podcast is amazing. It's very much needed. And it actually is, you're the perfect host for it.
Oh, I so appreciate you for saying that. I mean, you're someone that I've looked up to. So to hear that from you, I really received that. And I'm taking it in right now. I'm living in the moment, you know?
Exactly. Receive it.
I'm really just so appreciative of all your support and the lessons along the way and becoming a leader in this industry. And we've always had these conversations one-on-one. So I just thought it would be amazing for you to share some of the gems that you shared with me. So let's just dive right in. Tell us about your journey in the music industry and what roles led up to you becoming the head of A&R at Empire.
I have to say that I was inspired as a child from the beginning with my parents. My father had a band in the garage and I gave concerts in the third grade. At recess, I danced for a kind of local rappers. I played classical piano for 8 years. I can't remember half of the things that I learned, unfortunately, and I should have stuck with it. And, you know, all of it, I feel like sort of led to my purpose. And me falling in love with hip hop around 13 years old and watching Crush Groove and realizing they find talent. A&R people find talent. That's what I want to do. And that kind of inspired me to do what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? Went on to do an A&R for Def Jam for 10 years and then found a couple acts and ended up doing management for a little while. And, you know, now I'm here.
Amazing. I love your journey. I know we've talked a lot about you having mentors coming up in the business. Talk about how important it is for mentorship and who those mentors were for you.
You know, to be honest, when I first started, there was a friend of mine that we met in high school, and she had an uncle who had a distribution company, West Coast Distribution out here in California, and he distributed everyone. And she fell in love with the music business and was telling me all about it and asked me if I wanted to be her assistant when she got her higher position. And she really mentored me the whole way. You know, she literally said to me, when you start, you know, I'm going to fire you in a year, but I want you to learn everything you can. And she made sure I learned it all, you know, and then from there, I went on to work for Def Jam, and Lior and Russell. I think Russell was probably one of the best mentors that I've had. He supported me completely through everything. And along the way, several people kind of just gave to me and fed me information and taught me things. Like Ernie Singleton used to run MCA Records a long time ago. And he used to tell me, you shouldn't have to apply for a job. And I was confused. I'm like, what do you mean? You should work so hard that they call you. And I held on to that. So several people along the way have fed into me, you know, and really inspired me and taught me a lot of things. Mentors are key in growing and learning and trying to avoid the mistakes.
You're absolutely right. And for what it's worth, I feel like probably as you were coming up, there were fewer women of color that, you know, fulfilled those leadership roles that could offer mentorship. So the fact that you're able to tap into someone who did have the ability to carry you in a way in the business, I think that is fascinating. And then also just the fact that you work for some of the GOATs in the music industry and these men that, you know, for what it's worth in the hip hop world aren't necessarily advocating for women, the fact that they did lift you up, that's also amazing. So shout out to the men out here that are really supporting women of color.
But one thing I have to say, and I thought about this the other day when a friend of mine was, we were just kind of going over the old days, right? Mm-hmm. And contrary to belief, there were several Black women in power, in powerful positions at all of the companies. There were a lot more than there are now, which really you would think that there weren't a lot, right? But the same thing that happens now is what happened then. And that is, we thought we all, and I'll say we, because I was one of them, but I wasn't an executive. I was an assistant coming up at that time. I was trying to be Cassandra Mills and, Vivian Chu and all of these people. I would say a few of them would be there to support me. There was Sylvia, there was all these other women executives, but not all of them were there to help each other. And because women always tend to think there's only one seat at the table when there could be several if you support each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk a lot about that on the show too, the importance of collaborating and lifting each other up, because that crabs in a barrel mentality only hurts us in the long run. We all have something to offer. We all have unique skill sets that can help motivate and bring the company up. And we want more people that look like us at the table, right? Because we're not a monolith. Yeah. And the least amount of us that show up to the table, the more the wider, leaders will think that everything that we do speaks to the collective and not just the individual. So that's a huge issue. And I honor that you said when you came up, there were more women of color in executive roles. And hopefully some of the initiatives that are being brought to the table now can help expand that even more moving forward. So there's so many challenges that women of color face in this business. Can you provide an instance where an obstacle that you've had to overcome?
There are several different obstacles you kind of go through, and some of them are for a Black woman. Some of them are just because you're a woman. So I feel like all of them kind of are just as important, right? But for me, being a woman in hip hop, because I was in hip hop, I was in rap, right? So you're going to get so many different things from that. I also had executives that weren't Black that I had to fight with, or that wanted to compete with me, whether it was they wanted a creative position, but they were a lawyer. So they did things like create a position like general manager of A&R so they could be above me, little things like that. But some of the obstacles I faced was just being a woman in A&R and coming in the studio and not being respected for my mind, but being treated like a piece of meat, or them trying to talk to me as opposed to taking my ideas for their project. So, some of those things were some of the things that I had to deal with. And the way that I was around them, I don't think was necessarily the easiest or the best thing, but sometimes I would dress like a guy. I'd come to the studio with baggy clothes on so they wouldn't see what I look like. They wouldn't see my body parts, which I feel like is kind of PTSD because I still do it now. Like I wear baggy things all the time, but it's a part of it. At one point I even gained weight. If I think a guy likes really thin girls, I would gain weight so I wouldn't do the project. So I wouldn't have to deal with that type of thing. You know what I mean? So being a woman in A&R, it's a lot of things you have to deal with because you think about it. 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 in the morning, everybody drinking, everybody might be smoking, who knows what they're doing. Like their vision is blurred sometimes. Rarely, majority of the artists at Def Jam were very respectful and they respected us because we were all young. But I ran into a few where it was just very difficult. So
everything that you said, I've heard so many times on the show, like from A&Rs to managers, just being the only woman in the room. A lot of times you're having to deal with the male gaze, like you said, thinking that you're not intelligent enough to speak on issues. And so they don't even address you or ask you the questions when you're the person in charge. You're the one that's leading the session. You're the one that's, making all these moves for them.
Set it up. Exactly.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy to me. But the fact that you stay in yourself and centered and know what you're there for, and you take ownership of it and assert yourself, in those positions. I think that's what garners the respect ultimately. I'm a firm believer in that the work speaks for itself. But no, I agree with you that it's incumbent upon us as women of color, especially, to not allow people to walk over us to actually say, hey, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to do a job. I'm good at my job, that kind of thing. And I feel like you get a lot of respect for you having stood up for yourself and done what you needed to do. So just taking in all of that. What would you say was your mama, I made it moment? The moment that you knew you were headed in the right direction, and what characteristics do you attribute to reaching that point?
First of all, I want to start with the characteristics because it's a part of who I was and who I've always been and who my parents instilled in me and really pushed me towards. And, I was persistent. I was confident, even though I had insecurities, because everyone has them, but I was confident about it. I knew I just didn't doubt myself. I trusted my gut and I was persistent. And I had so much tenacity that sometimes people thought I was bigger than I was. Because I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. I would walk up to whomever it was, and say, hi, LA Reid, I'm Tina Davis, and I do such and such and such, and I want you to know that I think da 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 da. And
yes.
To the point to where they're looking at me like, okay. You had that experience where somebody's like, okay.
Definitely, yes.
It made people pay attention because I act like I was already them. And another thing is, I realized that, and I say this to a lot of the people I mentor, whatever you do, don't be intimidated by me, because guess what? I wake up the same way. I lay down and get up the same way. I go to the bathroom the same way you do. I put my pants on the same way you do. If I get cut, I bleed the same way you do. Don't be intimidated by these senior executives. They respect when you feel comfortable talking around them. They really don't like when you're as intimidated where you won't show and shine, because they want you to shine. So I think that was what really helped me to get to this point, and speaking up for myself was another thing. I trust my gut and I spoke on it, and I laid on the sword. So that brings me to my aha, mama, I made it moment. I was working at Def Jam, and I, like I said, really wanted to be an A&R person. At 13, I literally said, I want to work for Russell and I want to work for Def Jam. Got the job. And one day I was in the office, and I heard this man coming down the hallway, and he was loud on his phone, and he was cussing somebody out on the phone. I don't know who he's talking to. But the next thing I know, he walks into the office and he says, who is Tina Davis? And I'm like, me? And everybody's pointing at me. And I'm like, me? And he's like, okay, so I want you to get all the serial numbers for all of the equipment in the office. I want you to take all of the reels. At that time, we had reels. Take all the reels, and I want you to find us another office, and you now run Def Jam on the West Coast.
Hey, it's lit.
I was like, what? I was 25 years old.
Wow.
I was blown away. And then as that was happening, I was going through all the reels. I said, wait a minute, because I'm listening to the records. Because first of all, when you're young, especially when you're young and hungry, I had that hunger. I listened to everything I could find, anything, radio, anything that came out. So I was going through the reels, and this song came on, and I said, oh my God, we have to put this out immediately. So I called him and said, listen, first I called Julie Greenwald, because she was Lior's assistant. So I said, Julie, this record is a smash. We got to put this out. You need to play this for Lior immediately. She said, okay, well, you should call him. So then I called him. I said, Lior, we have this record. The sample is we own the master. So we need to put this out immediately. He said, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm telling you, it's going to be a number one hit. So I sent it to him, and he was like, yeah, this song is great. And it ended up being probably the biggest record that we had at the time. And to this day, it's played on commercials. And the song was This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan.
You mean a classic?
It was a classic.
Wow, that is insane.
It was a classic. Every time I hear it now, it takes me right back to that office, back.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you know it was going to be a hit?
My gut. It's like one thing I tell A&Rs all the time, you can listen to records, right? You can hear music, but when you feel it is when it's something special. Like I feel like I live in my purpose, and I trust God that this is my purpose. So I look for the feeling and the emotion, because music is supposed to evoke emotion. Any kind of art is supposed to evoke emotion. So for me to pick a hit, I have to feel it. I can't just hear it. I hear everything, but to feel it is when you know it.
Ooh, I love that. Bars, bars. Loving that. But you said something really important too, which is audacity, having the audacity to stand in your position, to own who you are and what you bring to the table, to be confident as you're approaching people. And absolutely, one of the things that I've learned, and I've kind of learned the hard way, because I feel like up until recently, I've been really playing small, but I used to feel very intimidated walking up to senior executives or just feeling like that's just not my place. It
Mhm.
wasn't until I said, you know what, I'm important too. Like
Exactly.
that, you know, that I started to advocate for myself. And then that grew into more opportunities to speak up. And so I think it also takes some practice,
Mhm.
being in those vulnerable positions and being open to learning, being able to take an L every now and then is, oh, I was wrong, and learn and move on from that. So I receive what you were saying, and I know that a lot of women of color are going to resonate with that as well. And yeah, I mean,
It's important to know timing though, because
yeah,
having tact and being respectful of people's space in their conversation. So if someone's having a conversation and you see them, don't just break into the because that'll go the wrong way.
yeah, that's true
But
too.
you have to be polite. You have to, come up, speak, say hello, but don't be intimidated. Don't, try your best not to have jitters and shake a little bit because it
No,
is overwhelming. And I know it is because it's something that you may want to, the person may have inspired you for years and you finally get the opportunity to say something to you. So you're to them and you're nervous. So I get that part, but try and speak your truth and be strong in your position and just represent yourself the best way you possibly can. Because people pay attention. I pay attention.
right.
Somebody comes up to me and they're sweet and they're nice. I mean, even when I met you, you know what I mean? As soon as you came, and fortunately, the people who work in this company are just good people.
Facts.
But when you got here, the first thing you did was call me and say, when can we go eat? You weren't nervous. You wasn't asking, can I see you? You weren't, you weren't nervous. You were straight up and came right to me and said, hi, I'm Janisha. And when can we eat? Can you talk to me? I was like, absolutely. And every time you
Oh,
come, we go to
lucky.
dinner.
I felt like so lucky and privileged because I mean we work for a man who wants us to build those bridges. And my very first interaction with him, he said, I think Tina would be an amazing mentor for you. And so just to identify that, I think was just like, I'm not gonna let that opportunity go to waste, by being scared, so I felt even more honored because you were so graceful to be able to say, yeah, I got time. Yeah, we can go get some lunch. And I really just see how important it is us continuing to have a dialogue and continuing to go out to lunch and have those conversations. I was just telling someone the other day that the kind of relationship you and I have, we don't always talk about work. Actually,
Mhm.
most of the time we talk about
You
personal
don't.
stuff, which is great, because we're not just, our jobs. We
Mhm.
do great, great work, but we have a similar lived experience as women of color in this business. And that's the thing that we connect with,
Right.
even more so. And just to bring more of a human element to people that you regard as well, yes, we are human. We experience some of the same things. And you can build deeper relationships with people when you're not just talking about surface level things,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate you being open with me and sharing too with me some of the times when I'm messing up out here in these streets. Um, I appreciate it. I appreciate all of it. So, what advice would you give aspiring women of color in the music industry?
The advice I would have given a long time ago would be different than the advice I would give now. And I say that because it's just a different era. Like when I was growing up, you could tell the difference between an executive, someone who wanted to be high up on the totem pole and have a seat at the table, from a girl who was in a video or that was a dancer, and there's nothing wrong. I'm not shunning any of that. All of the positions are important and key, but they dress different. They look different. They shine different. That's the best way to put it. Now, some young girls dress just like the video girls. Some young girls looks like they're really just trying to come up and find the hottest ticket that they can jump on top of I didn't mean it that way, but you know what I mean. Situation, jump on top of the situation, and just, come up in some way, really, and not focused on their careers. And sometimes it gets misconstrued, and some people don't necessarily respect them because of that. Or sometimes they look at them, and it's not always right, because guess what? You should wear what you want to wear. That's why I say it's a different time, right? Wear what you want to wear, but at the same time, you should consider where you want to go. Because if you are dressing like you're in a video and, it's a pool party, then they're going to look at you in that way. And they're not going to stop looking at you in that way. I'm not saying you need to have a button-up shirt to your neck with, a suit. But at the same time, you have to leave something to the imagination. And you also have to carry yourself like you're in a corporate setting.
Yeah. Well, we have that talk all the time, too. Like one of the very first interviews I had with Tammy Luttrell, who's a Grammy-nominated songwriter. And she spoke on that, like the fact that the way you show up is how people will perceive you, right?
Absolutely.
You have to represent yourself in a way that you want people to represent, see you, so we are in an age where social media kind of encourages women, especially women of color, to dress provocatively in order for there to be more followers and in order for the clout of social media, right? But there's a way to do it tastefully. I think there's a balance. I feel like I kind of have a little bit of that balance. Like I come in with the shoulders showing, but it's still like, I know I'm a curvier girl, so there's only so much I can do before it goes the line between sexy and classy, but there's a way to do it. And I think that's really what we need to be more aware of. It's not about, like you said, being super conservative.
Right.
It's about really like taking a look in the mirror and say, is this how I want people to see me?
Right.
And will they take me seriously if I'm dressed this certain way? And I know exactly what you're talking about too. I've seen a lot of that in the office where I'm like, oh, okay.
Absolutely.
You try not to judge, but it's hard because you chose to show up that way. I don't know what to say.
Right. And men look at you for your body and not for your mind. And women too. Women look at you for your body and not your mind. It is what it is, but it's a personal choice. So that's why I say I'll say something different. These young ladies nowadays they aspire to do different things. If that's what your goal is, then that's fine.
Right. So if there was one thing that you could have done different in the industry, what would that have been? Even if it was like a misstep or miscalculation, what would that have been? And what would you do differently?
Well, I'll tell you, I probably would have, at one point in my career, I didn't take time for me. I did not give boundaries to the company I worked for and the artists and the clients that I worked for. It was all about them. And I thought in my mind, I had to work like a hamster on a wheel so that they saw that I was really hungry and that I really wanted it and that I was really good at what I did and to just never fall off. I thought that if I just took a minute, just a moment for my own personal life to have some type of balance for myself, that I would fall off. That's not true. That's not the case. And you shouldn't think that, right? So I think that's something I would have done differently in the past 30 years. Now I have boundaries. Now I don't jump at every opportunity and say I'm doing it. There are things that I could be doing even next week. My assistant kept saying, are you going? Are you going? Are you going? Everybody's telling everyone, Tina's going. Tina's going. I'm like, I'm not going. I don't have to be there. I'm not going. I'm staying here because I want to spend time with my family. So no, I'm not going. But I think that's one thing. Another thing is not thinking I should have stopped for a moment to have a family, to build a family. It's okay to have a family, to have a child. It's okay to have a husband or, just have personal life that is outside of the music business.
Yeah. Oh, man. We had to go there. Because we talk about this all the time. Like, okay, I think what happens to your previous point, this industry doesn't allow us to really sit down and observe what we've accomplished. It's always what's the next thing? And because we are, I think, so few and far between as women of color, we feel like we have to overcompensate for that, right? We have to overproduce. We have to overextend ourselves in our time and be overly accommodating in order just to be seen, right? Or recognized. So I think there's a deeper issue there, why we end up just working ourselves to the bone in this business. But I think it's amazing that you have hindsight now, having been in your career as long as you have, to say, okay, I could have done that a little bit differently. I could have set boundaries earlier. And it is, again, about like the practice of doing that as well. So I have had so many conversations with young girls coming in the business, and that's their mentality is, I can't stop. I gotta move. And it's like, just relax. Everything's fine. And also scarcity is actually to your advantage, you know, when you can just step back for a second, let people miss you let people miss you. And then to your point about having a family. So unsurprisingly, the data research showed that women of color, I think it was only 20% of us actually are in relationships. I don't know that this industry gives us the opportunity to invest our time into a relationship. It really doesn't offer the opportunity for us to cultivate that kind of thing. And then on top of that, you know, if you're getting paid a lot, you deal with a lot of insecure men. If you're into men, you deal with a lot of insecurities on that. And so it's like, is it even worth it? Like, is it even worth it? So I'm kind of experiencing some of that challenges. Do I even care to be in a relationship if I'm really passionate about this thing that I'm doing? And I know being in a relationship, unless the person is coming with something just as valuable, it has a similar lifestyle, you know, and understands what I have to experience on a day-to-day basis, and is not trying to diminish my light and my shine, because that tends to happen too. I'm not really too much worried about it. Now, obviously, I'm 35 years old. I understand that the biological clock is ticking. You know, if I want to have kids biologically, then I'll have to really sit down and consider investing my time and energy into that.
But you know what, though? Modern technology, you can freeze your eggs and have time to do that. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's about around 30, 33. A doctor told me to freeze my eggs, and I didn't, because I was moving a million miles a minute. I will say, as a young executive, especially as a woman, you definitely feel that you need to keep going, but you take time for yourself. Even if it's, hey, every Sunday is for God and for me. Even if it's, hey, I'm sorry, you guys, because guess what? People will respect you when you give them boundaries. People respect that. And then when it comes to relationships, the biggest thing is not dating a man in the music industry. Don't. Do not. It never works. I'm telling you, it rarely works. I only know a few on one hand of people who stayed together and it worked. And a lot of times they were together from high school, or they started in the industry on the same level and stayed together, right? It takes a certain mentality to be able to handle all the things that are thrown at you as a woman and as a man in this industry. And we kind of get spoiled, right? Because we have so many things that we get to have and do, right? So people's pastimes, what people do for a vacation is what we do for a living. So you know what I mean? So we go to parties, we go to different islands and do different things. We celebrate, we go to concerts. That's part of our job. So that's what they do for their pastime. So it's a little different. I do agree with you that you have insecure people, insecure men and women in relationships. And I never cared about how much, if you made the same amount that I've made, because we know the music industry pays very handsomely, very well. But I do believe that I want the compassionate person. I want the thoughtful person. I want the person who considers and looks at my character and says, okay, she's not doing that because I know her. I understand she's tired. She burnt the candle at both ends. So I'm not going to get ready to call her and cuss her out about the fact that she couldn't make it to my event. Because guess what? She's working her butt off, and I respect that. And I have compassion, and I'm thoughtful. You know, that's more important to me now. Before I was like you, like, okay, if you don't have, listen, I make this much. If you FedEx, bye.
I'm only like that because of my experience dealing with the other things.
Right.
Having sacrificed a lot for someone who wasn't bringing anything to the table.
Right. Absolutely. I respect that.
But you're right. We should also just strive for finding someone that matches with us, has chemistry with us and our lifestyles, and can balance us. So.
Yeah, and spiritually, if that's what you're about. Like, I definitely want someone who fears God as much as I do. And they don't have to be religious. I just want them to be kind of in the same space where I'm at, and I know they're out there. There's somebody out there for you that is in that space.
Well, thank you. You don't have to rush God though. I'm all right. Let me finish my mission first. And
one thing I've learned is I can't rush God at all. You want God to laugh at you? Tell him what you have planned.
These are facts. So there are a lot of common misconceptions about women of color in the business. Can you name some that you might have experienced or that are just not real and we need to stomp that out?
Really quickly, I can tell you that I feel like there aren't a lot of women producers, engineers, A&R, even graphic designers. I feel like they feel that African-American women, one, are too intimidating and too aggressive, one. And because we'll speak our mind, because we'll tell you what we feel. We won't be rude and disrespectful, but they think we will. I also feel that they don't think we're creative. So you don't see a lot of engineers. You don't see a lot of producers. There are some, but there are more men than there are women. So I think they expect us to be an executive in admin or, something that's a little more administrative. You might find, I don't know how many digital scientists do you know of? How many do you know?
So I actually don't know that many data scientists. That's the whole point for me. Just like everyone else, I wanted to be a creative, to be honest. I wanted to be A&R. I started out as a manager, but then I realized that there were so few of us on the side. And I was like, you know what? This is probably a lane I can make for myself because I like math. I can handle large sets of information. I know how to analyze things. And now it's actually paying off tremendously because using the data has positioned me in a way where people are now like, hey, I need to tap into your information. Hey, I need to tap into your skill set. And now other people can see, okay, you can make money on this side of the business. So I offer all of that to say that there are a lot of women of color in creative roles. And to your point, we deserve to be there as well because we're culture creators. We know how to move the needle forward, but there are just so many roles that we can offer our skills to in this business. We don't need to limit ourselves at all.
Yeah, well, there's not enough creative roles to me of women because there are women in it. But if you look at the ratio between a man and a woman, how many men are doing it, to how many women are doing it, it's not enough.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? So yeah, you might have 5 A&R women in the music industry, but it's 100 A&R men.
Yeah, you're right. That's so funny because one of my previous guests, she was a programming in radio promotions and programming. And she said that there's very few women in those roles and even fewer in like the urban space, which is like, huh? How is that? We're the ones driving the culture. How is it that you're not hiring us for those roles in particular?
Yeah, but there's very few, just like you said, in data, as a data scientist, analytically or creative, it's just not enough women, period.
I agree. We gotta change this. I'm out here really trying to get some, do some of the groundwork to get that moving and make these changes for us. So I'm looking forward to the support,
Yes, absolutely.
In that regard, how can women in the music industry advocate for each other in this space?
I thought about this several times and I've talked to women about this a lot. I feel like there's a boys club, right? Where they take care of each other. Some of them they have a discussion about it and say, listen, we work together. Let's always scratch each other's back. I got you. When you call me, I'm gonna always say yes. I'm gonna always make sure that if opportunity comes and my client can't do it, I'm calling you next and putting them towards you. It doesn't happen with women. Women just don't do it enough. you know, and guess what? I don't have to be your best friend for you to help me out. It's more about all of us helping each other out, because guess what? We have to do that for us to all have a seat at the table. There's not only one check. There can be multiple checks if we allow all of our peers to do it. It's a crab in a barrel thing for people of color, but it's a crab in a barrel thing for women too. And I think it's important that if you see a woman doing something wrong, let's say I see a young girl and she's not dressing appropriately, or she's doing things that I think it's not my place to tell her what to do, but I will tap her and say, hey, this is something I noticed. It's your decision, but I think it would help you a little bit more to get where you want to go if you considered such and such. You know, opinions like a forehead. Everybody has one. You take it or not, you know. I think we just got to help each other. I think you never know what people's experiences in their lives and how they were raised and their point of view on things until you talk to them about it. So I just feel like we got to help each other a lot more and consider it. So if you see a manager that has a client and, you know, and it's a new up and coming client and you think that client is pretty dope and you have the hottest artist on the charts right now, consider getting that artist to do a verse for that artist, or putting their arm around them just because it's a woman in that spot. Or if you know it's a team and it has 5 guys on a team and there's one girl there, and that woman, you can easily bring it to that woman to help make her look better within her situation. Consider doing that, because that is how we help each other. That is how we help each other, because men do it all the time. We just don't do it.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Like, learn to just tap each other in. You know what I mean?
And give compliments. You know what I mean? Don't be jealous. You see, like I see Ebony doing something. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. You see Brittany doing something. Go, Brittany. I see, you know, and for me, I think I actually, and maybe it's just because I've been in the business for so long, I get excited when I see other people winning. When I see stronger when Black women of color just getting things, any woman of color, it can be an Asian, it can be Latin American woman. I'm just happy about it because it just takes us 2 steps further ahead.
That's right.
So I think we have to celebrate each other a lot more.
I agree. No, completely. There's nothing else to even say about that. We need to learn to uplift each other. And I think it starts with our loving ourselves enough to like saying that person is not my competition.
Exactly.
You know,
if you're doing your job, that's not your competition. Now, being lazy, that's on you. You can't blame them. But also, I will say though, if I give you that opportunity, don't stab me in the back, because there are women that do that. That you'll give them an opportunity, you'll help them, you'll bring them in, and then they turn on you. Because I've had a friend do that to me before. Somebody I was friends with for years, and I brought them in, got them the job, and they turned on me. To the point to where the man that she was supporting came to me and said, you know, I got your girl, right? Yeah, because they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
See, the men know that they're saying that or playing 2 sides against the middle. So they don't want us to come together. And I'm not saying every man, I'm not saying that.
Right.
But some men are like this, some women are like that.
Conniving and plotting. Yeah. I'm starting to get some of that now in my career, where, because admittedly, I see the best in everybody. I want to just see everybody win. Like you said, I'm an eternal optimist, you know, and so, but that's always come back to bite me. Like, I need to be a little bit more discerning. I think that's really what it is. Be a little bit more vetting right now, especially. So yeah, you're right about that. It's sad, but yeah, we do need to continue to uplift each other. So anyway, I just really appreciate everything that you've been able to share today. I know that it's going to inspire other women of color to take a seat at the table, and I respect you. I just want to give you your flowers, girl, because you out here like really just blasting that door open for women of color. And I mean, I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you. Thank you. So what can we expect from Tina in the future? What are you excited for right now that you're working on?
In Empire, one thing I will say is that it's amazing that I'm able to work on all genres of music, because I've found, being a woman of color, that I'm usually in R&B and hip hop, or I have been, even though I've had artists that have grown to be pop artists and so on and so forth, but they like to put us in a box because we're of color. And I'm excited about our country, Nashville department and company. super excited about that. And we have a lot of great executives as well as talent coming out of there. Africa, we are one of the #1 labels in Africa and West Africa. We are in MENA, killing it. And I'm excited about all the African music and all the talent and the executives there. A lot of the talent we have in the UK domestically and just, all over the world, Latin America, in Brazil. And we are really reaching all areas, and people think Empire is just hip hop or R&B,
Right.
but we have so much more to offer. So I'm excited about sharing that with people. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to do a book about my life and what I've experienced, and, whether people learn from it or not, or I'm just using it as therapy. It's coming up. And I look forward to just mentoring as much as possible. At this point, I have maybe 6 or 7 girls that I just mentor regularly every now and then. And it seemed like every other day, someone else is like, girl, my niece is in so-and-so, call me. So I just enjoy feeding the minds of young people. So I'll probably continue to do that as well.
Well, you just have so much to offer. Your experience, as a woman of color, just a woman, being an A&R, all the things. And congratulate you for opening up these regions and these markets. And that's a legacy. That's a legacy. So honor and cherish you for everything that you do. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
I'm on IG, obviously, Tina.Davis. And when it first started, actually, yes, I was around when Twitter first started. I didn't use my name because I didn't want people being able to find me. Now people want to be found. But back then I didn't, because I was managing a client that all these little tiny bitty girls and little boys chased around. So I just made it my management company and changed the name. So that's Phase 2 Management on Twitter. And I'm on LinkedIn. It's the best way to reach out.
Awesome. Well, again, I just so appreciate you, Tina. Of course, we'll continue having our discussions, and I look forward to just learning more from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this podcast. We all need it.
Thank you.
Remember, stay positive, inspired, and true to yourself. Go out there and kill it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Pub Royalty Queen Podcast.